Welcome. It's
Great
great to
to
have
have
you all
you here.
here.
Absolutely.
And
And
also,
yeah, go ahead, David.
I was going to say, for those who might be watching onto this recording, a very warm welcome to you as well. So we have several people attending live with us to answer questions, but perhaps also you're attending afterwards. So feel free to write to us and we would be happy to interact with you. That was all.
Exactly. Yeah. So today, Maria, David, and I are going to tell you a little bit more about this very, very important for us, and not only for us, research. That is the state of the heart, and please, maybe David, you can put in the chat the link again, just for people. Maybe if you haven't had yet the time to read it, this is really an interesting research because this is not the first one. This is the latest that we released. And I think this is probably the third or a fourth that we produced at 6 seconds. And the state of the heart research is based actually on our 6 seconds emotional intelligence assessment. So over 230,000 people, over that number, took the say, starting in 2018 till 2022. And we produced two samples, statistical sample from where we can, then we analyze the data set. And so two samples, one of 10,000 people and the other one of 20,000 people. So it's really significant. So that's why we provide you with these numbers. And this research covers all the 7 regions in which we work, 143 countries, 27 sectors, and also we try to be very balanced in terms of age, in terms of space that we gave to age, to the gender reported, and the sectors, as said, job roles. So it's a quite complete and worldwide research. One of the graphs, one of the charts that you can find inside this document is this: that for us, and I think for all the assessors who are now on this call, is probably one of the most relevant graphs, because it explains somehow why EQ matters. So in this chart, there are all these little dots that are actually the individuals who took the say over those 4 years. And this graph shows the direct correlation between emotional intelligence and what at 6 seconds we call the success, so the performance. And for the certified here, you know that performance for us is not only effectiveness, so being able to achieve results, but also the quality of our relationships, the quality of our well-being, emotional, cognitive, and physical well-being, the satisfaction that we have in life. So 4 outcomes. And this graph says that if you improve your scores in emotional intelligence, there's a direct impact on your performance, in the individual performance. And especially it says that 53% of the variation of your performance is explained, is predicted by emotional intelligence. It means that emotional intelligence impacts the improvement, and impacts so much that is 53%. It explains 53% of that improvement. And this is not only for adults. The same results we obtained using the 6 seconds emotional intelligence for youth. It's not 53, it's 51, but it means a lot. So the real question is, so why EQ matters? Because it impacts our performance, the individual performance, as said, so the global idea of success. Does it make sense?
I think
Somehow?
it really does, Ilaria. And when you explain it that way, when we think of our success is contributed to by over 50% of EQ factors, the factors that we'll talk about in a few minutes' time. But those factors that are all learnable, measurable, competency-based, that we know through our methodologies that there are hot cognitive ideas that can help us to grow. And then we've worked with many
Absolutely.
people who over years can see that development and change coming through. So I think that's really interesting. Paul had a great question just there. How many dots and people are there? Well, the sample is just over 10,000, as Ilaria said. So I could imagine that every dot on there equates to probably around 10,000, but taken from our randomized sample of over 230,000 people taking the same.
And Paul,
And
I can see you there. It's just right above, 110.
Yeah.
So I can see you, Paul.
and I think if I understand Paul correctly, there he also included the question, how many are at this webinar today from these dots? I don't know, Paul, if I understood you the right way, that's how I understood Paul's question, but maybe it's my interpretation. Yes, I think many are here or might not be here, but listening to the recording as they have signed up for the recording.
So maybe 10 out of 10 so far. You could think somewhere you're there somewhere on there. And if you've had a say assessment with us or a debrief with someone in our network, then of course that person would be able to give you an idea. We know as assessors, we don't give out a numerical score, but there is a numerical score on the data sheet that can give us an indication of where we might sit on that. But of course, we don't get our life success score, so we don't know exactly where we are on there. But the correlation is clear, as you've said, Ilaria, which I think is fantastic. So, 47% other stuff, but 53% of success is EQ.
Absolutely. And maybe, Maria, now you can tell us, for the people who maybe are not familiar with the model and this correlation, if you maybe can explain a little bit how it works and what is the 6 seconds model in the end, that is the core of the state of the heart.
Thank you, Ilaria. Absolutely. As you said, the state of the heart, why we explain that to you, especially, it's important for everybody to understand that model who joins our webinar. The state of the heart report is based on this model and the EQ competencies who are embedded in there. So the ones who have been certified with us, that's a repetition, and please add your stories in the chat to that. For the ones who are here for the first time, let me explain you briefly. So this is the model that 6 Seconds has developed. It was already 1997 to make emotional intelligence not just a theory, but bring it as an actionable model, something that's hands-on to practice emotional intelligence. And it's a circle, as you can see, so it's not a rigid model, it's really a process as well. We see here these 3 areas, which are the important areas. And let's start with the blue one, the know yourself. Blue also stands for reflect in color psychology. The know yourself is really about the awareness of what's really going on and what emotions are we aware of and what kind of patterns are we using also with these emotions. So the key question is, what am I feeling for this area? Then the next section, the red, the choose yourself, red also like the red traffic light to remember easily. About choose yourself, about the question, what options do I have? This is really about being intentional. Do we kind of go on autopilot and do we do what we have done in the past? Or do we stop and pause at the red traffic light to consider risks, benefits, opportunities, consequences before we go into action? So really consider, what option do I have? And the green section, the give yourself, that's kind of the deeper area about the question, what do I truly want? So this is connected to a longer term vision and purpose for ourselves and people around us. And as mentioned already, it's a circle. We can also remember it as a propeller. And clearer also, the give yourself area is like the engine for our propeller that makes it spin. So what am I feeling? What options do I have? What do I truly want? So not just a model, it's a process. And here you see then embedded in these 3 pursuits, we see these 8 competencies. They look so much on that new graph. We have a new way of
yeah, thanks
design.
to marketing.
Yes.
Who, they actually redesigned the model for the state of the heart.
Exactly. So I give you, we have here definitions there, so everybody could read them. But let's give you in my words also briefly, what do they mean? Because we need a bit of understanding when we look at the outcome of the state of the heart in a minute. So the blue is connected, what we saw before, the blue, the know yourself. And hence emotional literacy is about how do we have the right vocabularies or the vocabularies at all to understand our emotions? Can we name them and get the message and the energy out of it? Recognize pattern is about how aware are we of our reoccurring habits, typical habits in situations. We all need them to be efficient, but are you aware of them also too when it's less efficient? Apply consequential thinking now in the choose yourself areas, considering risks, benefits, opportunities, consequences for ourselves and others before taking decisions. Navigating emotions is about validating, exploring, and transforming emotions, depending on what's most suitable in a situation. Engage intrinsic motivation is having the drive from within. The opposite is being driven by external factors. Exercise optimism is really seeing opportunities, options, also in difficult situations. If plan A and B doesn't work, to have a plan C, for example. Increased empathy is about having the capacity to put ourselves out of our own shoes and into other people's shoes, and really connecting also with emotions. Pursue noble goal. Actually, I want to mention here for the ones who first time joined the 6 seconds model, pursue noble goal is really also competency that really distinguishes the 6 seconds model from other EQ models and competencies. It's really the deeper area, and as it says here, connecting your daily choices to your overarching sense of purpose, clearly having the why we do what we do for ourselves and our surrounding. So this was a fast speed explanation. I actually want to share then in the chat, we have a link on our 6 seconds website where you can read up more also about the competencies after the webinar. So we do that at the end of the session.
Wonderful. So let's have a look at how we measured the scores, the outcomes of the competencies that Maria just mentioned. This is taken from the report, and you'll see here 2018 to 2022. So some scores from the previous state of the heart are the top line, and then the scores from the current template are there now. So you can see a little bit of a difference, can't you, there in those scores? And certainly this is where the report findings written by Josh Friedman and our marketing team and our statistician, actually, Daniel Choi, has contributed to this data as well. But overall, globally, just might be mindful here. We're going to show Europe in a minute, but globally, we see a decline across all those competencies, and some are more than others. So what stands out to some of you there watching? Is this what you're seeing out there in your work, you know, with those who you're thinking about? And let's think about what happened between 2018 and 2022. Something not so insignificant changed the world, of course, and we all recognize that. And so our lives have really changed. And I think for me, seeing that navigate emotions difference there, that's quite substantial. Likewise, optimism is also a substantial difference here. And as Maria said, having our why, pursuing noble goals, I think also stands out. We often say anything with a 2-bar difference, you know, is significant. So, I mean, we can dive deeper into this, of course, but thinking about, you know, how can we relate this to ourselves? And so thinking about if you were a person, if this were a person, in 2018, and the same person now in 2020. What do we see? So Paul says he sees lots of emotions out there, but people are struggling to know what to do with them, leading to a corrosion or explosion. Yeah. So we're not regulating our emotional selves as easily, which is navigate emotions. It's that ability to use our validate, explore, transform model, or to be able to, combine it with exercising optimism. So these scores are down. So it tells us really that there's work to do. And as a network of emotional intelligence practitioners, I think we can also consider, well, where do we put that work? How do we help as coaches, trainers, educators, or in the corporate sector as managers and leaders? How can we help others? How can we help ourselves, of course, as well? I love the term that Annabelle Jensen, our founder, used, mepathy. So have you had a little bit of mepathy for yourself? Maria, you mentioned before you felt the intensity of today, the emotions that were flowing, and you took a moment just to maybe take a moment for yourself, take a breath. A colleague...
Yeah, and I think what Benoit also put in the chat is definitely interesting, considering this world as a person, just like, a person really overwhelmed and self-centered, ignoring their own emotions and as, kind of strangers. And Benoit, when I put the question, what would you recommend to this person? He said maybe to pause. And can the world poses? This is a philosophical question, but I think it's really connected to what growth means, what development means in a collective space, and very interesting. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben. Also, the breathe, feel, and connect. Exactly. And it's so interesting looking at what Benoit is writing. Also, Ilaria, what you're saying, this philosophical question. Would the world pause? Didn't we try to, or were we forced to pause 2 years ago?
Yeah, and did we learn?
Did we learn? Where are we now?
No. Well, maybe we did. Maybe the next State of the Heart will show also, because if you consider that the data was collected probably just in the tail end of COVID globally, of course, different regions of the world, especially here in Europe, we took later to get back to a sense of normalcy. But I guess maybe the next State of the Heart might truly show us whether we're stuck now. But it's interesting too that you see that where the greatest differences are is in choose yourself. So we are still aware of our emotions, and that's great. Maybe we see our patterns. Maybe we have that noble goal. Maybe that goal was also paused for a period of time, where what we thought was this vision and spreading the word, suddenly we were forced, as you said, Maria, into isolation, really. That was the word. Everyone must isolate. So when we think of that, that's going to have negative consequences at some point. And so here, our ability to navigate through situations, engage intrinsic motivation and optimism, of course. But we also...
how much, sorry, David, just to interrupt you for a second, because what you're saying is really relevant in the sense that how much can this world can be really intentional? Are we intentional? So the choices that at different levels are made so far, even as people, I'm not only thinking of governments, as people, as movements and everything, where they're intentional. Apparently, it seems that this area, as you were saying, the choice, as Maria well described previously, intentions. Are we doing something because we really want to do that, or because this is what is happening now?
Yeah, we're forced in the direction that way. The choice is taken away.
And exactly, and I really, thanks Benoit for that. I really need to read that out loud because I got goosebumps when I read it. I'm very transparent now. COVID has forced the world to pause. 3 years after, we can see that humanity has recovered with its worst habits: less EQ, less connection, less empathy, more and more crisis and conflicts. A sad fact.
So if we
Exactly,
jump,
who has to spread the good word. Yes, exactly. And we need your support.
yeah. So again, thinking about what we've seen globally, though, tonight we're here to discuss Europe as the European division, of course. So we had another look at the European scores, and that's what we see here from the current report, just for this period of time now. So historically, it's a little bit, it's basically very similar in previous reports. So in this report, we see these outcomes for our European test takers and assessment takers. So again, asking you to think about, well, if this were a person and we were their assessor and we were spending some time in a debrief, maybe some coaching or a discussion, what would we say here? What do we see here, for instance?
If Europe was a manager, I'm reading Umberto or Umberta. I couldn't remember the comment in the chat. Absolutely. So what this person, this manager, this educator, this mom and dad, whoever, a person here in Europe, how could we support this person? Or also, what are the best competencies that could be used even more? This is our model. Yeah.
Or maybe some of you want to start with questions. What question could you ask that
Absolutely.
person or leader? Any ideas?
I mean, for me, I'd certainly be looking at that noble goal. If we see that score, 100 is the mean in the assessment. So therefore, we see that that's below the mean in a way. And I remember Annabelle Jensen saying, I think in one of the videos that we include in the PC self-study, Ilaria, she talks about it being noble goals being the supercharger of all the other competencies. So it is true. Yeah, let's start with why. But I think what I like about our model is that there's 5 criteria for a noble goal. It goes beyond, as you said before, Maria, daily choices. I love the question that says it gets you out of bed.
True.
So,
and not only what Ben is writing, good basement, time to put yourself in action. Noble goal, if we go in depth with that, is also 1, 2, 3 pasta. So what are the next steps? How can we put everything in action? So it's not only theory. Well, yes, the emotions are great, so you can be more self-aware. You can do something with that. And what can we do?
And I think that's the key here for us. Just considering what we said before, we were forced into isolation, but and the lovely comments before about, we've come back with our worst habits. So therefore, we have all a personal responsibility to use our own EQ in action, to recognize that where are we being a fish that doesn't talk about water, and we need to extend ourselves, even as practitioners of EQ, outside of our comfort zone. Talk to a new person, invite someone to a community call to show them the model and say, does this resonate with you in life? To share the 3 questions that we had before, and hear and give yourself, it's what do you truly want? And I think probably that's been taken away a little bit for all of us. We've had to reevaluate, but it's time to take action, as you said, Ilaria.
And I think to what you're saying, David, very interesting also to connect the question from Paul, especially considering that here in Europe, we see that intrinsic motivation is the strongest competency. But the question, how and where are you directing your energy? To what is it connected to? To what or to who or whom is it connected to? Are you directing it to what you really value or care about, or to a longer term purpose, vision? And what would that vision be? Back to what you said, David.
And I think too, the connection with global workplaces, referring to Umberto's comments before here, that if we leave emotions out of it, especially even now, then we're not able to truly find, when people are still in remote work or companies are asking them to come back into the offices. We're seeing a lot of that now. So forcing people, the big tech giants are reversing their forever we're going to be remote work stance, asking people to come back in. So people are having to deal with emotions, having to navigate them in the course of a day. And I don't know that we talk about often a VUCA world. I don't think the speed of change has slowed down post-COVID. If anything, it's starting to accelerate again. And so we're pulled in many directions. So the focus is perhaps waning a little bit.
And I think also, as you said, considering also for businesses, for the corporate area, if we look at, there was, we don't have now the exact comparison on that slide for what was it before, but we see also on the international and here that exercise optimism really has declined a lot and is one of the less developed score for, let's say, if this is a leader for that time being. So the question is really, because we know that optimism is really about seeing options and opportunities. But if we don't see options and opportunities, how do we find a way forward? It's kind of that risk to get stuck. And we know that not moving forward actually often has a backward development, stagnation as a first. And if we don't, and also the exercise optimism, pursue noble goal, and also navigate emotions are all very connected to energy and emotional literacy, of course, as well. And if that energy level is back and we don't see options, what's the consequence of that? By the way, another question to the whole everybody in that sorry, it's a long day webinar.
In the webinar. Yes, in the webinar
discussion.
We are in a webinar, Maria. Yes.
Yes.
Welcome.
I forgot. I thought we had a chat. No. Anyway, everybody here, how do you notice this in your surrounding? What do you see here and what we're discussing?
Yeah, also because talking about Europe is talking about over 20 countries. I mean, there are so many different settings and cultures and languages. And so maybe in different countries, this is just the summary, right? And an average for Europe, as we found that Europe is different than the global. And so, for example, again, for us in Europe, we were discussing, Maria, David, and I, about the energy crisis. Well, for Europe, yes, there's an energy crisis, but not so much. I mean, we probably are one of the regions moving on this. But again, we have other kind of, let's say, opportunities, just like optimism, as Maria said. So what are our alternatives? And so here maybe other countries are different, the single country. So maybe you can share a little bit more. What's the mood in, I don't know, in the UK, in Bulgaria,
France.
in Italy, in France. Exactly. What do you notice?
Albania.
Albania.
What do you notice, or how do you notice what's also connected to this state of the heart statistics here?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Selfishness.
Selfishness everywhere.
I was going to say in Austria, and I speak for Vienna, not for where Maria is from, but I see a lack of courtesy more and more. And so when you think of people walking down the street, or if you're in the supermarket, courtesy is about saying, oh, please, go. But sometimes it feels a little bit like, no, I was here, and I'm guilty of that just as much as anyone. Sometimes I'm in a rush. No, I've got to get to the webinar. So, you dig your heels in. But if we can, in those mini moments, turn it around. So instead of disconnection, as Paul said, go for connection. Yeah, sure, please. You need to go. Like, that's fine. Polarization, opposing views on things. It's this or it's that. Very black and white thinking. Perhaps
and once again,
as well, where Paul's from.
And connecting also to the selfishness, when we see intrinsic motivation as such a strong competency, which is important competency to drive change, but if this stands out so much, the question that I think is always very reflective is really, is that if it was a person really driving change or just making some waves in one direction? Oh, and Heather, very nice to have you on the session as well. Motivated to protect self, rather than move for common goals. Absolutely.
And I'm sure many of you, like me, you have maybe done the say recently. I did mine in October again, got my results. So when I look at this Europe, I can also compare it to my own result as David. And I think that's what we're saying here. Maybe some of you are more experienced in a country or a region with your clients and who you serve, but also consider for yourself. This is the average across Europe. I know my navigate emotions as well is nowhere near where this one is. This would be nice if it could be. And it's a competency for me that consistently has been a little bit undervalued. So that's where we start change with ourselves.
Exactly. I think, sorry, Maria.
No, so exactly what you're saying. And that's why the question also, what opportunity do you think, if this was a person, what opportunity would you see that person would have?
And if we are one of those dots, and the change starts within, when we say that Europe or in our country we see polarization, we see selfishness, and if you asked this question to yourself, how would you answer? Because we tend to say, oh, in Europe, in Italy, there's selfishness, there's, polarization. But if you ask yourself, maybe you say, no, I'm quite empathic, or so are only the others, or are we included in this? And if we are, as we are, what can we do starting from us? What can I, myself, Ilaria, every day can commit to bring a step, to go a step ahead, just to move towards that empathy that we are sharing that is important, optimism. What can I do, and how can I role model for others, but especially for youth? And we will discuss about this later on.
Like Benoit writes, opportunity to take the lead on her life, deciding on the direction to follow. Beautiful. How to bring empathy in a determined, deliberate way. Yes, and this, as we also before just touched the topic, if this was a person or a company, if this outcome was a company, what could that mean? And this is something, a very, very messy slide. So it really needs attention, but I'm just want to show you, as we, at the beginning of the webinar, mentioned, like Ilaria explained, the importance of EQ. 53% is predicted to be successful by EQ. And then we need to consider, what is the impact of decreasing level of emotional intelligence for organization? And I think this explains it so nicely that actually when we start here, business with low emotional intelligence on a declining pathway, we know that there's some costs that they're maybe more hidden, and we're not so aware that they're actually connected to emotional intelligence, which means low EQ often starts with disconnecting. And as we were just talking, this whole conversation was about not connecting, more being on a self-discover, not to say egoistic, but egocentric, less connection, let's put it like this. Disconnection, and disconnection results automatically in less communication or even bad communication, which then also we know, and if we don't communicate, what is suffering first, we start to question, and we start to question the trust level. So trust is damaged, and less trust leads into poor collaboration. And didn't we just say how important it is to collaborate also in these more challenging times that we all gone through? So this is kind of often not so visible. And we just think, well, it results in loss of revenue, which is visible, loss of productivity, high turnover, higher healthcare, and on and on and on. So because it leads into this low engagement, and that's where we often now, unfortunately, see how the well-being of people, especially in organizations, is really at a very challenging level. So stress increases, and of course, the culture of the organization really, really gets affected, and the decline. So here I think, with now, when we see also black and white on this latest State of the Heart report, how really the emotional intelligence levels are declining, what effect it can have on organizations, on leaders, on the culture. So we see also all these opportunities and so many touch points where we can start to make a difference by having that awareness and turning that challenge into an opportunity. Any thoughts or questions about this messy chart?
Certainly feels like a powerful one that I've seen it a couple of times from our business case report, but I like the fact that it's a cycle. It's an infinite.
Yeah. It's a vicious.
It's a vicious, infinite cycle.
Exactly. And it's sorry.
Well, and wherever you start, poor communication. That's something I like to focus on with people.
Yeah, exactly, David.
And so then that can lead to trust damage, to a lack of many things, and then we don't say things. So the order almost feels right. Poor collaboration, lower engagement, higher stress. So cycling on and on. Yeah.
So a question as well here. What do you think then in an organization when we see one of these factors, or even you might see in, say, reports in your organization or organization you work with, that emotional intelligence is declining? What do you think, where it should be a starting point to make a difference?
Well, honestly, I like what now Dula just put in the chat. That is, damaged trust is the hardest to rebuild. So definitely one of the possible starting points, right, could be trust somehow, as Dula highlighted.
Absolutely. And I think also, as we know, to build trust is also a very important responsibility of leadership. So I think it's to start with leadership is so crucial, because this is where the connections are built and where the trust is built. And David, like you said, the communication is built.
Yeah.
Conversations, see those things, but
yeah,
I think we take trust for granted. We could do a whole webinar next year on trust, and maybe that's a good topic to consider, because it's a word that, it's in our vital signs model. It's the pillar of that. But people go, well, yeah, we need trust. We need to build trust. But then they go around bad-mouthing each other and around the company, or they get to the water cooler and start negatively speaking about colleagues, or situation arises and they put in a half effort, and so there's things that I think we ought to consider. Well, how do we actually build and display trust? How do we show trust?
And what Paul also typed in the chat is also very true, in the sense that he said in his HR experience, he saw this several times, right, in multiple situations. The real thing is that very often we do not attribute that to EQ, a lack of EQ. And this is our role, to show that missing link, that missing piece. So probably if we can infuse EQ into organizations, and let me say here that I think that this is not only a description of what happens in business organizations. This is really for all the types of organizations. If I think of schools, this is very similar. I mean, because there are costs in schools, there are, cycles and processes that need to be considered inside the organization, and then whatever else, non-profits or other kinds of organizations.
Absolutely, I agree with you, Ilaria. I think it's, yeah, also especially in education. And I love also what Giovanna, you shared, it has influence also on the company reputation outside. Absolutely. And I still think it's so crazy what's going on. We see all these challenges, and we see the economical challenges, we see the EQ challenges, and still, I don't know, it's in your country, but especially in Austria, people are craving to get new stuff. People applying not enough for jobs. And that's why then also the reputation of an organization from the outside is so, so important also for retention in organization. And yeah, just go ahead.
To use this slide. Okay, so Paul is asking if they can use this slide in presentations and social media.
Yes, of course. Paul, do you have the latest? I put it quickly in the, where do I have the link? Because this is in the latest business case 2023. A whole really, really interesting 6 seconds published document again. I don't know. Let me see.
Yeah, he said he's got it.
Yes,
so,
it's in there. It's in there.
Perfect.
Thank you, David.
It's on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen as well.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Good job. The whole business case is a really interesting 47-page document that really goes deeper into the corporate business case side of things as well. So definitely worth revisiting and reading as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the business. It's not about professionals. It's also about our future, our youth.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yes.
let me just, I don't know if, okay, let me go to the new share. I'm going to share a video first, a short clip produced by OECD, so the organization for economic development that is composed of 38 countries around the world, and they, you all know, they produce a lot of research, and they tend to interview, and there's a branch of OECD really focused on youth. And so this research is a 2022 research. And so it says a little bit what is summarized in our state of the art, but with other data that can be really interesting. I hope that I can switch and you can see now a video. Let me go full screen with this. And I also shared the sound, so I should ready to go, but please just thumbs up, Maria and David, if then it goes, you can hear it properly.
Today, many young people continue to face major obstacles. COVID-19 has disrupted learning and intensified risks many were already facing, like low-quality jobs, high and persistent youth unemployment, and social exclusion. Finding good quality, affordable housing remains a big challenge for many. And the toll on mental health continues to be severe for many young people. The closure of youth centres and other facilities for young people meant 35% of 18 to 24-year-olds felt left out of society, reducing the opportunities to build networks and weakening the sense of belonging. A collaborative effort involving policymakers and young people themselves is the most effective way to tackle the many problems and the intergenerational divide they face today. Including young people in the policy conversation is about giving them a voice to play a positive role in shaping their future. The lessons from previous crises are clear. Working with young people to take targeted, decisive action can make a big difference. Harness the power of youth.
Right. So what is telling you this research? what are the key points that in this case or this study they highlighted and somehow struck you?
For me, I know it might be that I hope my kids stay at home with me a little bit longer, so in a positive way. But we see housing there, you know, being unaffordable for people, and that, I mean, we know that even with the millennial generation now, that they can't afford housing, and so they're renting, and so there's pressure on this. But the youth are the next generation coming behind that you're going to share some data on in a minute, Ilaria. So we're really leaving them behind. So as much as I might want my kids who are 15, 11 to be staying home for another 10, 15 years, you know, they're being hampered in their ability to become adults, to move into the next stage of their life, aren't they?
And the image ether that you are sharing is really incredible. I mean, it means a lot. Youth are society's canary in the coal mine. If you think of it, it's terrible. If you know, if we know what the canary, then what is the destiny of these little birds? And but actually, it's exactly like that. Yeah, the stats are grim and makes them think that they're way behind or unsuccessful.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And what Murad also writes, great to have you here, Murad. Isolation, problems in connection with others, lack of hope, unclear vision. We don't have a clue the way we grew up in such a different time. And I think that's also a challenge, that our kids experience something that we didn't experience in that age in that way. I mean, I can just talk about myself. I don't know who everybody else.
Yeah.
And this is also, I think, needs a lot of empathy from parents for parenting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as previously we shared with you a profile of a person Europe, a person world. Here there's a profile of a Gen Z youth. And so this is what kids from 11 till 26, they are sharing around the world. And so what could you tell this youth? How could we support them? What are the key points that we would love to tell them? And if you could hear the voice of this youth, what this girl or boy could say, could tell us. And let's focus also on the positive aspects, the positive competencies. Apparently, applied consequential thinking is a strength. And even engage intrinsic motivation. So they are motivated. They see causes and consequences, right? Even optimism. I know that here it shows the gaps, right, between the previous, the 2018 till 2022. But in general, if we just check the trends of these competencies, there are also positive, right, aspects here, and yet also opportunities, big opportunities. Low hope, overwhelmed by emotions, and also overthinking, maybe. So high, having a so high consequential thinking and a so low navigating emotion. You know, maybe really frozen them. So much tech around at hand, and feeling so isolated and lonely at the same time is draining their energy. And while I was, sorry, David,
I was just going to add in a small comment where it's not from this source, but it ties into this, around the anxiety. So this, as you said, 26 is the upper edge. So these people may be starting to think about children. And this is the first generation that are actually saying, why would I bring children into this world right now? And so there's an anxiety, a climate anxiety it's called, around that concept that, you know, 30 years ago, you think, yeah, everyone wants to have children, or most people decide, or few don't. But but now it's like, well, this is actually a big decision for them, and so not an easy one. Growing up in these, the multiple situations, but especially around climate, I think they take it quite seriously. And that loss of hope. We tie optimism with strategic hope there, but it's dropped a little bit there. But losing hope overall, perhaps. In the future.
And I also speaks of fragility and how we can equip them with resilience. How can we build the resilience in this youth? Because optimism and navigating emotions, as Maria beautifully explained previously, they are absolutely connected. And if we do not see hope, how can we bounce back and bounce forward when there are adversities?
Yeah, exactly.
And then they have role models? Let's look at their purpose. And what are, in the video they were saying youth organizations, youth associations are not, what are the heroes that they have today? What are their role models?
Yeah. Well, as Murat said, I believe it's a mirror for us as parents. So that's a hard truth for us to swallow, to say, well, yeah, how are we helping our kids, our youth, our younger generations to navigate the new waters that exist right now on all fronts, whether it's on diversity, culture, gender, society, governments, climate, and so forth. It's not an easy situation. So we need our EQ in order to share this honestly with our educators, to have
exactly,
more people
Paul.
doing educator programs. Yeah.
And like Paul, right, lots of opportunity for growth. Absolutely.
Absolutely. A lot can be done. Can be done at home, in schools. This is what we are trying to do together with you all, trying really to bring emotional intelligence and social and emotional learning. They are not the only things that can be done, but as said, we go back to what we shared with the first graph. 53 and 51 for youth% of their performance, of their outcome, their satisfaction, their relationships and well-being is explained and impacted by emotional intelligence. So let's share with them more about how we feel, us as adults, and ask more questions and to them about their emotions and how they can use those, how they can be, these emotions can serve them instead of overwhelming them. How can they navigate? How can they validate and transform and really build on what they are feeling without being devastated by fear, by inability, the sense of inadequacy that maybe they are experiencing right now? This is our role. This is the role of adults, to equip them with this.
And now when you were speaking, Ilaria, and I see Heather joining here, the webinar, and also to either by role modeling, also like you said, Ilaria, showing that vulnerability and explaining them that success is not always a straight line. And Heather shared such a beautiful video this Monday on LinkedIn, where it clearly shows that after setbacks, come back stronger. And even it might be difficult now, but we will come out that stronger. I should have copied that video clip in here now in the webinar. I just remember, Heather, thanks for sharing that on LinkedIn. I loved it.
So go to Heather Cribben at LinkedIn and then find that video.
Exactly.
I'm not so techie like you, David. You would do
Heather
that.
might get 10 new followers or connections.
Oh, maybe. Yes,
and
exactly.
you are all welcome to share your LinkedIn page in the chat. Absolutely. And connect with 6 Seconds Europe, the LinkedIn page, because so you can stay up to date with what we are sharing. And then, of course, we can also, as Maria did, check what the beautiful videos or articles that you are sharing and are interesting.
Yeah.
We are almost at the end of this webinar, and we can collect a few more questions and just be quick, maybe in answering just a few of them. So if you have any other comments or question, please. This is the right time.
Meanwhile, you think about the question. I also, for the ones who join us for the first time, I shared also the link about our EQ, the 6 seconds EQ model and the competencies you can read up.
Beautiful.
And
also don't forget that if you click on this QR code, for the ones who are not maybe already connected with us and the newsletter, if you use this in Europe, of course, the 6 seconds newsletter will appear here, so you can immediately get in contact with us and receive news and updates.
Oh, well, I don't see any questions in the chat right now, but a few people saying thank you. So thank you, Ilaria and Maria, for sharing with us your insights and time tonight.
Thank you.
To all those who've attended, the sort of 10 plus people we had at one point, great. And for those who've watched on as well, thank you as well.
Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, everybody. And we are still here 2-3 minutes, so if somebody wants to.
Definitely. And we know we'd like to do this next year, so perhaps people can come along next year to several webinars that we'll have as well. Maybe we can deepen our insights into parenting. Trust seemed to come up tonight as well. So we could do something around youth and education more specifically.
Yeah, we are very committed, right, David and Maria, to this year we already shared and we hosted a few panels and webinars, but next year will be more. Yeah. And so please just join our newsletter, because in there you can find all the information about the free opportunities to know more about EQ.
Yeah, and also if there's a specific topic you would be very interested in, please reach out to us, or if you want to be part of something or share something where you experienced in education or in an organization something with EQ. Anyway, I think people want to start their evening now as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
We wish you all a nice evening. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Have a nice evening. Bye. Take care. Bye-bye.